The dream of flight is perhaps best depicted by the myth of Icarus and Daedalus. They used wax to glue feathers to their arms and took off. But when Icarus flew too close to the sun, his wax melted, and he lost each and every feather. Flapping his bare arms, he tragically fell back to Earth. Whereas most of us think of Icarus, I think we should focus on Daedalus, who pulled it off amazingly. He understood the principles of flight and also its limitations. If you grasp the principle, the myth falls and ideas take off. We have always marveled at how animals seem to move effortlessly without using almost no energy. But I think this is also the reason why we like to compete with animals and outperform them. Take running, for example. In 2004, Hugh Law was the first to outrun a horse over a 22-mile track. And the reason why he and we can win is because we evolved into long-distance runners on the African savanna. There we chased animals as long as we needed to, such that they were tired and couldn't run anymore, and then we had dinner. So that worked fantastic. But if we talk about swimming, we of course also are very proud of Michael Phelps. He was the first athlete to win 8 golden medals at the Olympics. But tuna can swim easily 10 times faster in the ocean. And if we think about flight, well, we just had a very bad evolutionary start. Only 100 years ago we were able to take off, but we did build amazing jumbo jets. That was great, but at some point our engineers realized that we can still learn something from birds. In 2001, NASA engineers were thinking about the future of flight, and they were saying what we need are materials that can change shape such that the wing can morph like a bird. So they thought this was really critical. But what's really challenging is that the material that we make our planes from, like aluminum and composites, are really rigid, very difficult to deform. So they said we need smart materials that can shape-shift on command. But what kind of surprised me about all of this is that at that time we actually didn't even know how much performance improvement bird wings have. So how much does this morphing really help? Nobody had measured it before. So this is why I studied swifts. Swifts are really amazing birds. They live there almost their entire life up there in the air. They catch up to 20,000 insects a day in flight. They even roost aloft at night. We don't know if they sleep. We've never measured their brain activity, but they are up there. We see that on the radar images. So, and what's even more amazing, they even mate in air, the wet dream of every pilot. So, Swift evolves into morphing marvels that can change their wing shapes easily. But unfortunately, every year a few die in our bird sanctuaries. In 2005, 50 individuals got lucky. They got one more flight in our wind tunnel. Here you see it. So what we wanted to find out is why are they so efficient? Therefore, we measured lift and drag force. And to understand lift and drag force, think of putting your hand outside of a car window, and then the force that pushes backwards is drag, and the first force that pushes upwards is lift. And if we change the angle of attack, we see how the forces change. So if we have these measurements, we want to interpret it, and for that we use graphs. So here I plot lift and drag horizontally, lift vertically. And by plotting all these points for the different angles of attack, I build up a polar that kind of shows the envelope of all the forces that this bird can generate with its fully extended wing. And it looks like this. And by doing the same thing for swept-back wings, we can compare compare the two, and what we found is that swept-back wings actually reduce drag a lot, and that really helps flying fast. But when the bird wants to fly slowly with fully extended wings, it gets much more lift. So this is how morphing really helps. And what's great about morphing and these measurements is that it shows that swifts can fly up to 60% further using morphing wings and 100% longer, so it really works. So I brought this idea to a group of students and said, wouldn't it be cool if you guys would be the first to build a morphing robot that can morph like a real bird at the same scale? And here's 10,000 euros to do it. So they actually did it, and this is their design. And its morphing wing consists of 4 feathers that are synchronized with a parallel mechanism that allows it to morph. And the whole thing is built out of carbon fiber, so not really smart material, but it is lightweight and very strong. And so the total plane, including the camera, weighs less than this cell phone. So very nice. And it actually flew. They demonstrated it to the media by hand launching it. And then it took off in wind force 5 to 6. And this is the video they made. Can you put the sound on, please? You saw the wing morphing. And here it flies with fully extended wings through the air. And the camera made images, and they actually demonstrated this airplane in India at a conference. So you'll see some ground images from India here, taken by the airplane. And then it can also make amazing maneuvers like a barrel roll. So now it's making a barrel roll with swept-back wings like this. And what was kind of funny with working with students, they always do things that I wasn't thinking of. Maybe I'm grown up a bit too much. So they did these crazy things like these barrel rolls. And what we learned from that is that these flimsy feathers can really withstand a lot of force and work very well. But if we think about aerobatics, then we also have to think about nature again, because nature really truly has nature's the best aerobats. So here you see a fly making a somersault, filmed at high speeds. It's truly amazing. And this is just something that happens in your backyard. Well, you might not believe this is true. You might think a fly can never lift a frog from a pool. But if we use our revolutionary theory of aircrafts, this fly can actually not even lift its own body weight from the ground. So flies are doing something special. And first of all, it's of course in their wing motion. Just look at this gracious flapping wing motion of a hoverfly taking off. And to better understand its aerodynamics, I used a robot insect at Caltech. Here you see it. It's submerged in oil. It's a fruit fly wing, and I release air bubbles along the leading and trailing edge. And these visualize a big leading edge vortex. It's like a tornado with a very low pressure in its core, which sucks up the wing. And this vortex was first discovered in 1996 at Cambridge University. And what's really neat about it, this vortex really boosts lift up to, say, 50% and more. And that's something that aerospace engineers like me would really like to exploit. But back in 2004, when I was doing this work, there was kind of a problem. Basically, everyone was thinking, including me, that if we wanted to exploit this, we needed to build robots at the scale of insects, because this is something that works for insects. So I used the same robot and did experiments for fruit flies. So again, I plot drag and lift forces. And the star indicates the forces that a fruit fly generates while hovering. And the other dots are all its other options. So basically, I repeated these experiments at the scale of a housefly and also at the scale of a hummingbird. And what it shows is that all these forces are very similar. So basically, insect aerodynamics scales from tiny to large. And that's the idea I brought to students again, and I challenged them to build a flapping micro-robot, the smallest possible with existing components, so electronics you could just buy from a company, for €10,000 again. And they did. They developed this micro-air vehicle. It's called the Delphi. It can really fly like an insect, can hover in the air, and also fly fast, and it can also take off and land vertically, as shown here. It can do this so reliable, it's kind of boring. So I speeded it up 6 times. It really works. And what was neat is that it was actually immediately copied by Japanese scientists who did a very good job. They built straight away at insect scale of 10 centimeters. And then there was this Japanese hobbyist that built a 6-centimeter version. And then I found this picture on the internet from a student named Brian, and he built a 1-gram version. It's actually the smallest one I've found so far. So it really scales, and you can ask the question, what is the smallest flapping robot that we could build? Well, let's go back to nature. So the smallest flying insects are parasitic wasps. This one is just 1 millimeter, and it hitchhikes on butterflies. So really tiny, and to film this, you need the world's best high-speed camera. I have a very simple high-speed camera myself at home. I filmed these insects in my backyard, and what I've found with high-speed video is that this bee was actually watching me. That was kind of surprising. But I thought, wow, this is really cool. High-speed video, I'm seeing new stuff. I'm a scientist, and I don't go outside as much. I'm very much in the lab studying animals. And outside, cool stuff is happening. Wouldn't it be neat if we would have 30 of these cameras? And then I was also dreaming of having the world's best camera, the Phantom V710. So all I needed was to buy these cameras and find some cameramen to operate them. So when I announced this idea on the national Dutch radio and television, I actually got together with my team a lot of responses. It was overwhelming. Many people wanted to help us out. So that was really neat. And this idea also won the Dutch Academic Year Prize, so we had some money. And so we bought the camera straight away. And I can tell you, the Phantom is really amazing. It can film 7,500 frames per second. Think BBC, think Discovery Channel, think National Geographic, and think about you and me playing with it. So that was really cool. And, but basically, when I talked about this with professional cameramen and companies, they were saying, this is a problem. This is high-tech equipment. We don't think you can pull it off with people, well, like you in the audience, to make some really cool footage, because this is really complicated stuff. You can film stuff like this, which my students did. This all takes place in a test tube. So this is just 1/10 of a second in the life of a parasitic wasp. And so what we decided to do actually was select the most promising members that we had of the general public in our within our 460 participants. And all we need to do is learn them to work with the cameras. And the first thing they needed to realize is that high-speed film is like a digital flipbook. So it consists of high-speed photos that you show one after each other. And basically, that 11 frames per wing beat is enough to already make a nice movie. This one is based on photos made by Edward Muybridge in 1887. So, but we figured it would look nicer if you would have more frames, so say 40 frames per wing beat. That would really make it smooth. The problem is that how do you select the frame rate to achieve this? So if you think of a swan, it flaps its wing very slowly. But if you think of, for example, a mosquito, it buzzes really fast. So how do you choose the right frame rate so that it looks great in slow motion in every detail? Basically, what was nice is that I figured that actually frame rate depends on wingspan, so the distance from tip to tip, and that we could give some values that would work to our participants. So basically, for this small insect, we need 22,000 frames per second. That's 900 times faster than your TV flickers. But the camera can do that. And then for bigger insects, you need lower frame rates. And for the biggest birds, you only need 100 frames per second. Still 4 times faster than your TV. So, but in this way, you can easily choose, because everyone can estimate the wingspan of an animal. This is about 50 centimeters. Okay, and then you look in the table, that's about, well, let's say 400 frames per second for a bird. So that's what we gave them. And this really helped our participants. And what was great is we got 2,400 movies in total with the different cameras. And I'm going to show you only 4. So here's one. This is a dragonfly mating wheel. And the dragonflies make a roll of 180 degrees, flapping these 8 wings in synchronous, passionately, graciously. It's really beautiful. Filmed by one of our participants. So, and then another example, for example, is this ladybug. It's filmed at 4,000 frames per second as its wings unfold. And what you can see at this high speed is that it's not going to happen symmetrically. It's actually not completely perfect. Maybe insects are not like perfect robots, and maybe we should not try to engineer our robots to be perfect. And what's kind of interesting is that we have 4 movies of ladybugs, and they all show this asymmetry. Even when the wing starts to flap in a second or so, you'll notice that the right wing further unfolds later than the left wing. And you also see that slow motion takes a long time. But here it goes, and takes off. Well, this is of course very nice, but I also have to be honest about all the video. Not every video is perfect, so here are some boring geese. So just look at them and see what you see. We just got a lot of data. What's interesting about boring data is that it can be exciting too. If you look carefully, you would see something there, and what the goose is doing, actually it's flying inverted. It's a behavior that they show during landing, and it's called whiffling. And here are the first ever, as far as I know, high-speed video images of it made by a participant. And we can just look what they do. It's crazy. And we have no clue why they do this. So this shows that the general public can truly help us find new, interesting scientific questions. And then finally, I want to show one more video made by an artist. He graduated from the Rietveld Academy here. And yeah, it's really beautiful. And it inspires me. It inspires me to develop new robots that not only work as nicely as nature, but also look as nice to the eye. So, in conclusion, if you grasp the principle, myths fall and ideas can take off. Thank you.